It happened in Tennessee, and it's all true. My own son and daughter-in-law left me at the airport with no cash, no plan, and no second thought. They didn't know I was headed to see my lawyer that day. You know what, Mom? We only got you a one-way ticket. You'll figure the rest out, Tanya told me, cool as anything. She said it while pulling her glossy designer suitcase into the first-class line, not even turning around. She smiled, that condescending smile people use when they think they're doing you a favor by being cruelly honest. You've got a phone, call someone, or sell it. That should get you a Greyhound ride, right? And just like that, they vanished, past security, into the terminal, absorbed by the hum of jet engines and filtered sunlight and Instagram stories. Gone along with every bit of dignity I still held in their eyes. There, I stood alone right in the center of Nashville International Airport, clutching my purse like a life preserver. No luggage, no boarding pass, no travel plan, just a light sweater and a printed itinerary that I now realized had been a prop all along. They never meant for me to return with them. They never really meant for me to go in the first place. I sold the last pearl necklace Jake had given me to help pay for the flights. They told me we were all contributing. They smiled when they said it, like it was a team effort. I never saw a breakdown of costs. I never saw a return flight confirmation, but I didn't question it. I had always been taught to trust family, even when they quietly stopped treating you like one. At the check-in counter, I noticed Tanya's mother had a priority tag on her luggage. She had a first-class seat. So did Tanya. So did Mark. I figured we were just seated separately for convenience. Tanya told me they'd come back and check on me after takeoff, but that was before they scanned my ticket and said it had been voided. Sorry, ma'am, the gate agent said gently, her brows scrunching the way people do when they're bracing for emotion. There's no return ticket under your name. I smiled, confused. There must be a mistake. But when I turned around, they were already walking away. I hurried after them to the security line, my folder of documents still clutched in my hands. That's when Tanya turned, sighed dramatically, and dropped the line I now know was rehearsed. You know what, Mom? We only bought you a one-way ticket. You'll figure it out. She said it like she was telling me the time, then added, sell your phone if you need to. Should cover the bus. Mark didn't say a word. He didn't even meet my eyes. He just adjusted his sunglasses and kept walking. They left me like trash used, discarded, forgotten. I stood there, frozen, too shocked to move, too proud to fall apart. No tears, not yet, just shallow breathing, like when you're trying to stay invisible in a place that demands motion. The last time I felt that kind of abandonment, I was 9 waiting for a father who promised to return from town. He never did. Now here I was again, full circle. Only this time, the one who left me was the very son I raised. The world kept spinning around me. A man pushed a stroller past. Teenagers in matching dance gear squealed over some inside joke. Somewhere, a flight to Orlando was calling final boarding. Sunlight hit the high glass and burned into my eyes. I looked at my phone, not expecting a message, certainly not from Mark. I just needed to feel it in my hand. It was all I had to prove I was still here, still real, still someone. I thought about calling someone. But who? My sister passed years ago. Most of my friends were busy with their own lives, their own grown children. I couldn't bear the thought of explaining this shame. I wouldn't. I'd been left behind by my own family, but I wasn't about to hand that humiliation to anyone else. So I straightened my spine, walked to a bench, and sat with my chin lifted. I didn't have a way home, but I had something else. Tucked into my bra, just above my heart, was a small envelope. Inside it a business card, a lawyer, an old friend of Jake's. He once told me, "If you ever need anything, Blake, you come find me." And now I would, because maybe I'd been left with nothing. But that didn't mean I had nothing left to do. Grief doesn't knock before it enters. It barges in, drops anchor, and settles in like it owns the place. That's how it felt when Jake died. Not sudden, just total. One moment he was asking where I put the cinnamon, the next he was on the hallway floor, the coffee mug in his hand still warm. The doctors said it was a stroke. Massive, final. We'd been married 42 years. 42 years of habits, laughter, mistakes, forgiveness, of raising a son, of losing a baby, of trying again, of memorizing each other's breath and heartbeat. He died on a Tuesday. It rained. That gentle soaking rain that doesn't chase you inside, but finds its way into your bones. I remember washing dishes hours after they took him, just staring at the window, watching the water trail down the glass. It looked like even the sky was trying to find its way home. I didn't cry then. I just stood still, listening to how loud silence could be. The days after blurred meals I didn't taste. Flowers I didn't remember. Faces I barely registered. The funeral was short. Jake hated being fussed over. "If anyone cries at my funeral, tell them to bring a mop," he used to joke. I tried not to cry, but I brought tissues anyway. When I came back to the house we built, the room sounded wrong. His toothbrush still beside mine, his slippers still tucked under the nightstand, as if he might walk back in, as if grief was a guest that rang the bell first. Time dragged forward. Some days I didn't change clothes. I sat in his chair and tried to remember how he laughed when something really got him. That deep laugh that made his shoulders shake. I tried to recall how he looked at me across a room. Tried to remember the woman I had been before she became the widow. Then Mark came by. He hugged me like he was in a hurry. "Mom," he said, "Tanya and I think you should take a little trip. Get some air." "A trip?" I asked. "Yeah, spring break. We're taking the kids to Florida. You should come. Clear your head." Tanya nodded beside him, full of sympathy, so smooth it felt scripted. "Jake would want that for you," she added. It felt like someone had cracked a window. I hadn't left Tennessee in years. The thought of warm sand, of sunlight, of waking up to something other than stillness. It stirred something inside me. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Of course," Tanya said brightly. "Your family." That word family, I held onto it like a rope. Later that week, I opened the jewelry box I hadn't touched since the funeral. In the corner was the gold ring Jake gave me for our 10th anniversary. It wasn't much in value, but it was everything in meaning. He had saved up, surprised me, slid it on my finger with a whisper. 10 more years. I wore it every day until the day he left this world. Then I took it off. I walked to a pawn shop and sold it. The man behind the counter looked surprised. "You sure, ma'am?" "I'm sure," I said, even as something caught in my throat. I used that money to help pay for the trip. Tanya said everyone was pitching. She mentioned there were flights available, but I'd have to pay for one myself. I didn't respond. I just turned around and slowly scanned the terminal. That's when I saw Mark and Tanya standing by a coffee stand, laughing at something on her phone. I walked toward them, my itinerary still crumpled and damp from the nervous sweat on my palms. "Mark," I said softly, "the agent told me there's no return ticket for me. Can you check yours?" He looked up at me, a flicker of unease flashing across his face before he covered it with a weak smile. "Oh, right. Yeah," he said, scratching the back of his head. "We thought maybe you'd want to stay a bit longer, you know. Have some peace and quiet." My heart seemed to stop for a moment. "What?" I asked. Tanya jumped in, her voice casual. "Let's not sugarcoat it. We only bought you a one-way, Blake. Flights are expensive. And let's—" I just stood there, clutching the now meaningless itinerary like it could somehow protect me. Then it hit me. I didn't have my bag either. They'd checked in their luggage together at the curb. Tanya had waved away my small carry-on, telling me, "Don't worry about it, Blake. Let us take care of everything." It was probably still sitting in their trunk. They hadn't just left me without a flight. They'd taken my belongings too. "Where's my bag?" I finally asked. Mark looked at Tanya, who gave him a quick glance back. She replied smoothly, "We checked it with ours, but if you end up staying longer, we can get it back to you later." I just stared at them. "So I don't have a ticket. I don't have my things. And you didn't think I should know that before we got to the airport?" "You're blowing this out of proportion," Tanya said flatly. "You said you wanted to be included," Mark added. "Well, this is just how we do things. We're trying to be flexible. We didn't mean to upset you. You've just been really sensitive since Dad passed, and we thought this would be easier." "For who?" I asked. They didn't answer. Tanya zipped her designer suitcase and stood upright. "We've got to get through security. Our boarding group is almost up." And with that, they walked away. No hug, no apology, no acknowledgement of the fact that they had discarded me. I stood still as they disappeared into the security line. Tanya's heels clicked confidently over the tile. Mark carried only his small carry-on, his face blank and unbothered. For a moment, I felt like I was sinking, like the floor was opening beneath me, not from being alone, but from being cast aside by the people who were supposed to love me the most. Someone bumped into me gently, a woman with a stroller, and murmured an apology. I nodded silently, unable to speak. My hands were trembling as I stepped out of the crowd's path and sat on a bench by the wall. Still, I didn't cry. I had moved beyond tears. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. I didn't call them. I didn't call anyone in the family. I opened the Notes app and typed one simple sentence: "This will be the last time I trust them." Then I scrolled to a contact I'd saved years ago, J.R. Lawyer. Jake had introduced us back when he was still working. J.R. had handled our mortgage, our wills. He'd always said, "If you ever need anything, Blake, I'll be there." I tapped the number and pressed call. When he answered, I skipped any greetings. I just said, "I need to update my will." In that moment, something shifted. I was no longer the forgotten mother left at the airport. I was a woman reclaiming her power. I looked up at the departures screen. Their flight was still listed as on time. So was mine. Only it wasn't heading to the same destination. I didn't chase them to the gate. I remained on that bench until their flight vanished from the board, until the final boarding call echoed through the terminal, until it was clear there would be no texts, no calls, no second thoughts from Mark. They were likely in their seats already, sipping orange juice in extra legroom, posting filtered photos captioned with "family time" and "grateful for the little things." But I wasn't in the frame, not anymore. I reached into the side pocket of my purse, past the folded tissues, peppermint wrappers, and lotion. My fingers landed on the envelope I'd tucked away years ago without even needing to look. Jake and I had called it our break glass in case of emergency fund. We started it after his heart scare, just a few hundred at first. We quietly added more over the years, a 50 here, a 20 there, sometimes a full 100 after a good tax return. It wasn't meant for birthdays. It wasn't meant for dinner out or gifts. It was meant for the moment, when one of us had no one else left and needed to act quickly. I opened the envelope. Inside was $9.60 crisp, fresh, and mine. It wasn't a fortune, but it was enough. I walked to the curb and waved down a taxi. Gave the driver an address I hadn't spoken in years. 287 Jefferson Street, Monroe and Wade Law Office. He nodded and pulled into traffic. The cab smelled like pine air freshener and something deep-fried. I watched the streets of Tennessee past the gas stations, the old strip malls, all the familiar places that had shaped my life. The last time I'd been to that law office, Jake had just retired. We were drafting our first will. Back then, it had been simple. Everything went to each other, and then to Mark. We'd believed in our legacy. We had trusted our son. Now I trusted almost nothing. But I knew one thing. Mark and Tanya didn't deserve what was written in ink anymore. J.R. still worked there. He was older now, slower to rise from his chair, but his handshake was as steady as I remembered. "Blake," he said, surprise in his voice. "It's been so long. I was so sorry to hear about Jake." "Thank you," I replied, taking a seat carefully. "I'm here to rewrite my will." He raised an eyebrow. "All right. Any specific changes?" "Yes," I said. "I want to remove my son and his wife. From everything." He paused. "Are you absolutely sure?" "I am." He didn't ask for details. He'd known Jake too well to think I'd make a choice like this lightly. He simply opened a file, clicked his pen, and waited. "I want to name a new beneficiary," I said. "An organization that supports elderly people who've been abused or neglected by their families." He looked up. "That's quite specific." "I've become very specific." He nodded. "I can make that happen. I'll just need some info on the organization." "I brought it," I said, handing over a pamphlet I had picked up months earlier at the community center, never thinking I'd one day use it for myself. As he jotted down the contact info, I leaned forward. "And while we're at it, I want to know if what happened to me, being misled and used, is something I can take legal action on." "You mean financial exploitation?" he asked. "Yes, elder abuse," I said firmly. "Is there anything in the law that protects people like me?" "There is," he said, his tone now more serious, "especially if the person is vulnerable or dependent." "Did they access your money directly?" "No," I said calmly. "But they manipulated me into giving it under false pretenses. They told me I was part of something I never truly was." He nodded slowly. "We can definitely pursue that. And at the very least, I'll make sure they never touch another penny of what the estate wasn't large. Certainly nothing that would make headlines. But it was enough. A house Jake and I had finally paid off after 30 years. A stretch of farmland left to me by my father, which we had leased for quiet grazing. A few investment accounts we had nurtured like seedlings in a garden. And savings I had kept separate, as Jake once urged, just in case. Well, the case had come, and now it had purpose. I left everything to an organization called Elder Haven, a non-profit devoted to supporting older adults who've been neglected, abandoned, or financially exploited by their own families. They offered more than assistance. They offered dignity, legal help, housing, community. They helped women like me. And I knew I wasn't the only one. I included a letter with the bequest not addressed to anyone, but meant for everyone who might find themselves where I had been. Left behind, written off, seen as a burden instead of a blessing. "If you're reading this," I wrote, "you are not invisible. You are not crazy. And you are not done yet." Before checking out of the motel that morning, I called J.R. once more. "I'd like a digital copy," I told him. scanned, password protected, sent to the email I'll give you now. No one else gets it, not even if they come asking. He understood. And I want the original documents stored in your office, locked, fireproof, accessible only to you and the designated executor. Of course, Blake, he said, and if your family contacts me? Remind them they were removed by my own hand. That was it. The chain was severed, not with bitterness, but with a sense of liberation. It's a strange thing, cutting out the very people you once imagined would carry your legacy. But legacy isn't earned through blood. It's earned through care. And what they had tried to claim through manipulation no longer belonged to them. Later that day, I mailed a copy of the documents to a safety deposit box, one registered only in my name. I became the sole key holder. I changed passwords, updated emergency contacts, removed every trace of them from access to my affairs. When a bank teller asked if I wanted to authorize a family member, I smiled. No, just me. Those words used to sound lonely. Now, they felt like strength. I walked back toward the motel and past a park where children shouted from jungle gyms. I sat on a bench, letting the sunlight warm my face, and remembered Jake's words. Not everything you plant will grow, but what does that's yours? I had planted enough. Now it was time to grow something new. I returned to the house one final time, not to argue, not to cry, not even to say goodbye, just to retrieve what was mine. The movers came on a Tuesday, midweek, while Mark and Tanya were at work. I'd hired the company from 2 counties over to avoid gossip and small-town whispers. I'm only taking a few things, I told them, Jake's reading chair, a box of his favorite books, our wedding album, his navy cap, my mother's hand-stitched quilt, not the dining table where we had hosted holidays, not the couch where Mark had watched Saturday cartoons, not the china we bought with our first bonus, just the pieces that still felt like truth. I moved through the rooms slowly. The kitchen where I'd baked birthday cakes, the hallway where Jake collapsed that day, coffee still steaming in his mug, the living room where we'd once danced barefoot on our anniversary. I didn't cry. I'd already done that. I left the keys in an envelope on the counter with a single note. Don't call. Don't ask. I am exactly where I want to be. The ride to my new home took less than 2 hours, but it felt like crossing lifetimes. The sign out front read, Willow Grove Independent Living for Seniors with Dignity. Jake and I had visited once, quietly. Maybe one day, he had said, grinning, if they've got good pudding. Willow Grove had pudding and so much more. Sunlight through wide windows. Hallways that smelled of lemon instead of antiseptic. Jazz playing softly from a distant radio. People who looked up and saw you. Welcome, Mrs. Monroe, said the woman at the front desk. We've been expecting you. It was the first time in months someone said my name, like it mattered. My apartment was cozy and clean, a corner unit overlooking the courtyard. My few belongings had already been delivered. On the table was a welcome basket jam, crackers, a handwritten note from the director. Thank you for helping us make this place possible. Now it's yours too. What no one knew, not Mark, not Tanya, was that Willow Grove had been partially funded through my donation to Elder Haven. My estate hadn't just gone to a charity. It had built something, a refuge, a community, a legacy. In the days that followed, I settled in. I joined the book circle. I made a friend named Helen who made me laugh until tea sprayed from my nose. I signed up for watercolor classes. I even offered to lead a letter-writing workshop, something Jake and I used to do on Sundays. The best part? At 5 p.m., someone always knocked and said, "Dinner's ready," not because they wanted anything, just because they wanted me there. And for the first time in years, I sat at a table without hesitation, not tolerated, not pitied, welcomed. That house I left behind wasn't home. Home isn't where your things live. It's where you are wanted. 6 months passed. 6 months of morning coffee in the sunroom, of learning to sketch birds and stretch aching limbs in yoga. 6 months of hearing my name without sighs behind it. Then the day arrived. I had circled it on the calendar tucked inside my armoire. That morning, JR sent a short email. Letters delivered as of 9 a.m. By 11, my phone started ringing. Mark. 16 missed calls. I watched each one come in, his name flashing again and again. A name that had once filled my heart now only brought calm. I didn't answer. Not the first call, not the 12th, not the one at midnight. He left no voicemail, just rang, like someone suddenly realizing the door was locked. The next morning, he emailed me. Subject, I'm sorry, Mom, but at least let us keep the garden. I opened it out of curiosity, not hope. Mom, I don't know what to say. Tanya and I got the letter. We didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Maybe we were wrong. Maybe we didn't handle things right. Tanya says it wasn't meant to feel like abandonment. She thought you'd enjoy staying longer. I know that doesn't excuse anything. But this removing us from everything? Even the land? The kids helped plant that garden. It means something. We're not perfect, but we're your family. Can we please talk? Just 5 minutes. One call. Mark, I read it. Then closed my laptop. We didn't think you'd actually go through with it. That sentence told me everything. They thought I was too soft, too desperate, that I would bark but never bite. They mistook kindness for weakness. They assumed I would keep pouring from an empty cup. They were wrong. They didn't just leave me at the airport. They left me long before that, with every selfish decision, every time they saw me as a convenience and not a person. And now they wanted the garden, the one I was never asked to help with, the one Tanya claimed in filtered Instagram posts as her sanctuary, never once mentioning my name. They could keep the memory, not the land, that now belonged to Elder Haven, who planned to turn it into a therapeutic horticulture space for aging women with memory loss. My land, my decision, my legacy. That afternoon, I visited the library at Willow Grove and held a poetry book, not even to read, just to feel something honest in my hands. Helen sat beside me. You've got that look, she said. What look? I asked. The one people wear after telling the world who they really are? I smiled. Maybe I have. Good, she said. That world needed to hear it. I glanced once more at Mark's email and its final line. Just 5 minutes. I thought about replying. One clean sentence. Something simple. Instead, I powered off my phone. Then I picked up my journal and wrote, Some things are inherited, others are earned. And some, like peace, are made from scratch. Let them wonder. Let them rage. Let them remember the sound of my voice when birthdays pass. Because I would be here, with people who didn't expect me to fund their comfort with my silence. People who chose me. I didn't owe anyone a conversation. I had already given something better a clear goodbye, and a door they could no longer walk through. The silence here doesn't ache. It soothes. I fill my days with book club debates and lemon tea, with gentle yoga and loud laughter. My paintings are unsteady, but they are mine. I sketch birds that I never knew the names of until now. One evening, Ruth looked at me and asked, Do you ever regret it? She didn't need to explain. We both knew what she meant. I regret not.